Hello again, everyone. Welcome to another knowledge lesson. Before we get started on what we're going to learn about today, I want to quickly fill in this very last trail on our map. So far, we filled in the Erie Canal, which connected the Hudson River to Lake Erie. This purple line represents the Trail of Tears, the forced march of the Cherokee people from their homes in Georgia to Oklahoma. Our green trail represents the path or the route that riders on the Pony Express traveled on, and this red one is the Oregon Trail that many pioneers traveled on as they moved westward. This last one we'll outline or highlight in yellow is our Transcontinental Railroad. The railroad started in Omaha and went all the way across the continent to San Francisco, California. All right, my friends, today we are going to learn about these animals. We'll talk about trains a little bit today too. We are going to learn about these animals. This is a picture of bison or buffalo. Bison are the largest land mammals in North America. They weigh about 2,000 pounds, which is the weight of a small car. And they are 6.5 feet tall, just at their shoulder. So these were very big mammals. One of the Native American tribes that depended on these big mammals for food were the Lakota Sioux. The Lakota Sioux lived in an area that was called the Great Plains area. That includes modern-day South Dakota, Wyoming, and Montana. Because the area where this tribe lived was called the Great Plains Territory, they were often called Plains Indians. Tens of millions of bison used to live in the Great Plains area, but by the early 1900s, they were dying out and were in danger of extinction. For many years, people have worked to save them from extinction. They now live safely protected in farms and in national parks, and they're no longer endangered. The title of our read aloud today is called The Buffalo Hunters. Take a minute to make a prediction about what you think is going to happen in our story today. Bison. Bison are large, shaggy mammals, often referred to as buffalo. The bison huddled together in the herd to keep warm during the winter storm. Charged. Charged means ran or rushed at, especially as part of an attack. On his horse Bucephalus, Alexander the Great charged into battle against the Persians. Skilled. Skilled means trained or experienced in something that requires a certain ability. The skilled chef prepared the perfect dish to serve at the grand opening of the restaurant. Solemnly. If you do something solemnly, you do it seriously. Students listened solemnly as Mrs. Mack talked about the Trail of Tears. I'm going to describe a couple of actions. If I describe people acting solemnly, I want you to say they were acting solemnly. If I describe people not acting solemnly, say they were not acting solemnly. Our first one says, students stood and recited the Pledge of Allegiance. They were acting solemnly. The people in the stadium cheered loudly for their home baseball team. They were not acting solemnly. The class listened quietly as the teacher read to them about the people who worked in dangerous conditions while building the Great Wall of China. They were acting solemnly. Regina and her sister laughed as her dad told one of his famous camp stories. They were not acting solemnly. And our last one, the Spartans said goodbye to their families before joining the other Greeks to battle the great Persian army. They were acting solemnly. Running Fox felt the tingle of butterflies in his stomach as he sat on his horse. It was his first time hunting for bison with his tribe, and he was excited and nervous. He hoped to be able to hunt well and to make his tribe proud. He saw his brother, Black Eagle, smile and nod at him, as if to say, "You'll be all right." Running Fox smiled a tight, nervous smile. The butterflies in his stomach felt like they were multiplying, and he could feel his heart pounding. Running Fox knew how important the bison were to his people, the Lakota Sioux. The bison were their source of life. The Lakota depended on bison meat for food, and bison skins for leather and clothing. They even used the bones of the bison to make tools. Running Fox remembered his father teaching him about the bison. "The bison are sacred to our people, my son," he said. "That is why we honor their spirit and thank them for giving us their lives to help our people survive. We have always followed the great bison herds. Before we had horses, we followed them on foot." There were not always horses in the United States for transportation. The Europeans brought horses with them when they came to the New World. But now, Running Fox thought proudly, "We are great horsemen who can keep up with the bison when they try to escape. We kill only as many as we need to live. We never kill so many that the herds disappear. If the bison disappear, so will the Lakota people." Just then, Chief Red Cloud, the Lakota leader, gave the first signal. Running Fox knew exactly what to do. He and half of the hunters rode down to the bottom of the hill behind the herd so that the bison would not see them. They positioned themselves directly in the path that the bison would need to take to escape when Chief Red Cloud's group charged down the hill. After giving Running Fox's group time to get into position, Chief Red Cloud, still atop the hill, whistled sharply. At once, his hunters kicked their heels against their horses' sides and charged down the hill toward the bison. Most of the herd did not even notice the horsemen coming, but a few bulls, the huge shaggy male bison at the edges of the herd, were on guard. They saw the riders and lifted their great horned heads, snorting loudly. Then they turned and galloped, or ran at great speed, away from the approaching hunters. In a matter of moments, the entire herd was moving, picking up speed as the bulls sensed danger. Despite their heavy weight, bison can run as fast as 40 miles per hour. The skilled horsemen kept their balance and directed their horses by using pressure from their knees and feet, leaving their hands free for bows and arrows. "Aye, aye!" the Lakota shouted, and the frightened bison ran away from the hunters even faster, right along the pathway the hunters had predicted. That was when Running Fox and the other hunters came riding out from behind the hill. Seeing them, the bison did not know where to go. By this time, the hunters were riding along the edges of the herd, shooting arrows. Running Fox was so secure on his horse that he felt like his horse was a part of him, that the horse's legs were his legs. Nervousness forgotten, Running Fox fired one arrow and then another, A big bull bison fell to the ground. How do you think Running Fox felt to get a bison on his very first hunting trip? Do you think he was feeling happy or proud? After a few more bison had fallen, Chief Red Cloud shouted, "We have enough!" He signaled to the hunters to stop. Running Fox and the other hunters turned back, allowing the remainder of the bison to thunder off. Chief Red Cloud rode over to Running Fox, put his hand on the young man's shoulder, and said, "Let us pause and thank these bison for giving themselves so that we might live." After a few minutes, Chief Red Cloud said, "Now you are truly a Lakota." Running Fox grinned for just a moment. Then he remembered to look serious and grown up. Changing his expression, he nodded solemnly to the chief and thought, "Chief Red Cloud has honored me by noticing what I did today." Meanwhile, the bison moved on, slowing down as the immediate danger disappeared. Leaving some of the men to prepare the fallen bison, Chief Red Cloud signaled Running Fox to join a group of hunters who were following the bison to see where the herd was headed. Running Fox was honored to be asked to track the herd. He rode proudly behind the herd with other more experienced hunters. As they continued on, Running Fox suddenly realized the herd is heading straight toward the Iron Horse. What's the Iron Horse again? You've got it. It was a nickname for trains or locomotives. Train tracks had been built right through the middle of the Lakota hunting grounds, and recently, locomotives had started charging through on them, hissing steam and carrying train cars with passengers. Do you think those locomotive trains could be dangerous to the bison and to the Lakota Sioux? Later, just as the train tracks came into view, the riders came to a sight so shocking that they all stopped riding and stared. On the ground before them lay dozens of bison. Someone had killed them and taken only the best parts of the meat, leaving behind the rest of the bison. Is this the way that Running Fox and his people treat bison? How do you think the Lakota felt to see that? Running Fox asked a hunter next to him, "Why would someone kill in this way? Don't they know that wasting a bison is wrong?" Who do you think was responsible for wasting the bison? The hunter did not answer. Running Fox turned to his chief. Chief Red Cloud's face looked as angry and stormy as his name implied. "The men who made the Iron Horse did this," he said. "It is not enough that they have come into our country, made our hunting grounds smaller, and forced us into different lands. Now they hunt the bison for sport, for fun, only taking certain parts of the bison and leaving the rest to rot. They threaten our people's lives by killing so many bison. If all of the bison die, so will our people. We cannot survive without the bison." Who are the people that Chief Red Cloud is talking about? Right? He's talking about the white colonists and settlers. So the Cherokee weren't the only Native Americans that were forced from their land by the settlers. Running Fox could see Chief Red Cloud's eyes blazing with anger as he spoke. "I have tried to tell them," the chief continued solemnly, "but they refuse to listen." He turned, looked right at Running Fox, and said, "We have spoken peacefully with them, and we will do so again. I hope that this time they will listen. Otherwise, we may have further conflict with them. Chief Red Cloud turned and led his men back the way they had come. All right, my friends, today we learned about the Lakota Sioux. Who were the Lakota Sioux? The Lakota Sioux were a group or tribe of Native Americans that lived on the plains and hunted this animal, bison or buffalo. Why were bison so important to the Lakota Sioux? You've got it. They considered bison to be sacred and necessary because they were their main source of food, clothing, shelter, and tools. How did the hunters follow the bison herds? They followed them either by walking or riding on horseback. How did they hunt them? Right, as we saw in our story, they would charge in on horseback and round them up using bows and arrows. How was hunting bison different for the Lakota Sioux and some of the European settlers? The Lakota Sioux only hunted for what they needed, and they used every part of the buffalo or bison that they could. The European settlers hunted for sport and usually only took the very best meat with them, leaving the rest behind. What was the iron horse? Remember, we talked about this in our last lesson too. The iron horse was a nickname for the locomotive train. Why did Chief Red Cloud speak solemnly about the presence of the iron horse on Native American lands? The chief was very concerned or worried because he felt that the people who created the iron horse were destroying the bison and their hunting grounds and were forcing them to relocate or move to other locations. All right, my friends, go ahead and open up the PDF that is attached to this assignment, and I will get on my computer to show you what to do. All right, my friends, when you have that PDF open, it's another quilt square for a quilt about all the things we're learning about westward expansion. This quilt square should be titled The Buffalo Hunters. In the center of my quilt square, I drew a buffalo. I'm not very good at drawing, so it's not a very good buffalo. You can also draw a buffalo, or you might draw a bow and arrow, or you might draw a scene of the Lakota Sioux hunting a buffalo. You choose what is going to help you remember this story best. When you are finished with your drawing in the middle, as always with all of our other quilt squares, you will need to put 4 facts about the Lakota Sioux and the buffalo that we learned in our read aloud today. There are a lot of different things that you could put in those corners, and those things don't have to be written in complete sentences. Some of the ones that I put in the corners, you can use some of these too, or you can use your own facts that you remember from the story, were that the Lakota Sioux were also called the Plains Indians. Buffalo were sacred to the Lakota Sioux, and they depended on them for their survival, right? They used every part of the buffalo. So the settlers, the white settlers that were hunting the buffalo for sport, only took the best parts, the best meat, and left the rest. But the Lakota people used all of it, even the bones, to make tools. When they hunted buffalo, they used their legs and knees to steer and control the horses, while they used their hands and arms to shoot arrows from their bows. Again, you can do any facts that you remember from the story that you think will be important for you to remember. And when you are done with your drawing, and those 4 facts in each corner. On the next page, you will turn those facts into a paragraph about the Lakota Sioux. That paragraph should be 3 to 5 complete sentences. Make sure your sentences are complete and that they make sense. So remember, 3 to 5 means you might have 3 sentences, you might have 4, or you might have 5, however many you need to include all of the information that you put up here on your quilt square. When you are done with your drawing, your facts in the 4 corners, and your paragraph, then you may turn this one in, and you are all finished with knowledge today. Thank you.